circuit, the Churchill.
What the fuck? I cannot believe it.
If you weren't scared watching that on board with Fernando Alonso, then you're much braver than I am. My name's Aaron, this is the 5 Red Lights, and today I'm going to discuss with you if Formula 1 should use variable qualifying formats based on safety rather than entertainment.
1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's go!
Welcome along then everyone, thank you for joining me on a slightly different formatted video today. Now, before I crack on, if you enjoy this sort of video, be sure to leave a thumbs up, leave a like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, check out my other content. Check out the June Driver of the Month vote, which the results of which have gone up over the weekend. So go and check out who was voted as the #1 driver for the month of June. Now let's dive on into the scary incident between Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel. And, well, the outcome, had things gone wrong, doesn't really bear thinking about, does it? But let's, for hypotheticals, imagine that it had gone wrong and Fernando had gone over the back of Sebastian at the final corner of the Red Bull ring. And the first question I have to ask is, would the runoff area on the exit of turn 10 have been large enough to protect the Spaniard from major injury on contact with the wall? Now, I'm not sure it would have been. I calculated roughly that from the apex of turn 10, the distance where the car would likely end up if there's an accident is about 80 metres. Now, it's an oddly shaped runoff area, so parts of it are deeper and less deep than others. So is that really sensible? Now, I know this is going into territory of FIA grading for circuits, and that's not what this video is meant to be about. But then that has to be brought into our thought of process. Now you have to also think, would the wall itself, the tyre barrier, have been in the right place had Fernando taken flight? Perhaps he might have come down quickly enough, but the speed that the cars carry through those final couple of corners is just ridiculous. It's absurd. And what's beyond there? Well, there's an access road for recovery vehicles and for marshals. There's the marshals and the recovery vehicles themselves, and past that there's just some dense tree growth, which kind of brings me back to the 1999 Le Mans accident for Mark Webber and Peter Dumbreck when they were driving for Mercedes. Now, Mercedes had an inbuilt flaw within their car, which meant it took off and it flipped while it came over the crest on the straight. Mark and Peter both escaped with minor injuries, although Mark wasn't believed by the mechanics and engineers back in the garage. And it wasn't until the next day, when Peter Dumbreck had his accident, which landed in the trees next to the road, next to the circuit, that people finally realised that Mark Webber had been telling the truth all along. Miraculously, both escaped unhurt. Now, also for hypotheticals, let's imagine that the supposed rain had arrived just at the moment that Fernando comes round turn 9. And it kind of, think 2018 Hockenheim vibes, where one part of the track is very wet, very slippery, and the rest of it is pretty much dry. Now imagine Sebastian is scrabbling around, low grip, can't get traction, and Fernando, seeing that, jumps on the brakes, but he slides, locks up and careers into the back of Sebastian at well over 100 miles an hour. Is that really the sort of situation we want within Formula 1? And that brings me to the qualifying format. Now, I know that there was the technical directives, well, not technical directives, but the guidelines from the FIA race director, Michael Masi. And Michael has a bit of a checkered past in his short time as race director. Now, of course, he is following the great Charlie Whiting, who himself made mistakes, but Michael has a slightly patchy record of pushing boundaries on safety. Turkey, in qualifying last year when there was a recovery vehicle on the track, and he tried to blame somebody else for it, and there's been some other incidents too. Now, he did say that there wasn't to be overtaking or backing up in the final 2 corners and it would be penalised, but then we got into this situation because Sebastian was trying to follow the guidelines, but other drivers were going in front of him and then backing him up. So where does the line get drawn? Sebastian lost out and Fernando lost out, but the cars in front got away scot-free. And that got me thinking, should there be variable qualifying formats based on safety at each circuit rather than an entertainment value? So I've come up with some ideas. Some have already been well talked about before, and some we're going to see this weekend at Silverstone. But let's just discuss them now. Now, before I get to my suggestions for changing the format, I suggested, I put this question to Twitter, whether Formula 1 should change the formats based on safety rather than entertainment, and I got a couple of interesting responses. So the first one is from MattGP, at Bugeja _Matt even. Check out his channel. Very, very good race previews ahead of each Formula 1 race. I really enjoy his humour and the mini F1 quiz that he does in every single video. So go and check him out, which is MattGP on YouTube. Now, his view was that if you impede a driver and you qualify ahead of that driver, your position should be exchanged for the position of the driver you blocked. Now, I suggested that Mazepin could simply block Verstappen and then that way end up on pole position. And Matt then went on to clarify that he wouldn't have it work that way. If you block someone and you still out-qualified that person, you should lose your position for his. So in that case, if by some miracle Mazepin is faster than Max, yes, the spinning Russian would end up on pole, but that's never going to happen. And there was also a comment from Pits to Podium, check them out, at Pits to Podium. This format is fine, track characteristics are a concern. We experience such scenarios only in Austria and Monza. Now, I agree that the current format is fine, but is it just the circuit layouts that are causing the problem? And surely then it's worth looking at this variable format. Now, Pits to Podium replied with probably yes, F1 should experiment with some alternatives. Let's see how sprint qualifying works in Monza. Or perhaps something like F2 tried in Monaco, where they split the grid into 2 groups. Now, first of all, I must stress that I love the current qualifying format. It works, it builds a natural crescendo, and it has drama throughout the hour. And importantly, within each session, everyone has an equal opportunity to set a lap time, and we get to see the cars pushed and thrashed to their very maximum. It's an excellent balance of driver skill and entertainment. Now, my first suggestion for a variable qualifying format is group qualifying. Now, Formula E use a group qualifying system where the cars run in reverse championship order, 6 cars at a time within a group. Now, of course, this would naturally help the amount of traffic that a car could encounter on a flying lap, because the drivers would probably all be together on the circuit. They'll all go out at the same time, which is fine, and then they naturally spread themselves out in the final sector. Now, this does bring its own issues like the backing up of drivers, and that can cause a problem, but the big stressor of coming across another car backing up while you're on a hot lap is drastically lowered, simply because there's a lower number of cars on the circuit. Now, of course, Formula 2 used a group format in Monaco where half the grid went out first and then half the grid went out again, and they had 2 time sections to set their laps. I don't think that would work for Formula 1. I think the group qualifying setup used by Formula E could be slightly more beneficial, but then you almost do penalise the guys who are leading the championship. So I'm not sure where that one would fall in terms of the hierarchy of formats to try first. Perhaps my next one has a little bit more merit, and it's the one that we have seen before. It is, of course, one-shot qualifying, and it's pretty much the ultimate test of a qualifying lap, of a car and of the driver. And this is arguably the easiest remedy to this issue. So, like it was used in the mid-2000s, there could only be maximum of 3 cars on track at a time, which obviously massively reduces the safety risks, especially in that final sector in Austria. Now, from a TV perspective, just one car running around on a lap is not ideal, and it doesn't inject that climax to a session. But I have a solution. You've got an hour. So the first 30 minutes, the cars then need to be ready, prepared, ready to go out, and they run 30 minutes, one-shot qualifying, which sets an order for the second 30 minutes. Now the second 30 minutes is then run in reverse order, or slowest to fastest, from the first half an hour. So you don't waste time, and you still get only one lap to decide a certain outcome. So the first 30 minutes sets the running order for the second 30 minutes. And you could also introduce a little bit more strategy with the top 10 drivers at the end of qualifying having to use the tyres that they did their first qualifying run on. Now, what you might end up with is, say, Mercedes and Red Bull running the mediums in the first half an hour and potentially being lower down in the order. Now, how often do we see a Mercedes or a Red Bull not top Q2 because they run a slower tyre and just want to get through so they can start on that? Now, they could be potentially penalised for that, taking that gamble and having to run earlier on the run that sets the grid. So you could have like an Alonso or a Vettel running on the soft tyres to begin with, and then going out last when the track is theoretically at its grippiest. And this could give you a jumbled up grid and keep everybody pretty safe. Let me know what you think of that. I think that's quite a nice solution to one-shot qualifying. It keeps lots of cars on the track all the way through the hour. You get to see everyone twice, and there's a bit of jeopardy. There's a bit of gamesmanship. There's a bit of strategy. And what you do on Saturday then transfers to the Sunday directly. See how it works. Now, of course, my final suggestion is one that we're going to see this weekend. It's the sprint qualifying. But of course, that means that the qualifying sessions we have now get moved to the Friday. And of course, we're yet to see how sprint qualifying looks, what it feels like, how it works. And we need to keep an open mind because it could be beneficial. It's a bit of an unknown quantity at the moment, but let's see how it goes at Silverstone and at Monza. The benefit that the sprint qualifying system could have is they can open up the DRS zones. Now, in Austria, there's 3 DRS zones, so it is definitely possible to overtake. If you think back to 1999, Mika Häkkinen recovered from last on lap 1 to finish 3rd on the podium, passing pretty much everyone in the field bar Eddie Irvine and David Coulthard. But at other tracks, it might not work so well, of course. The issue with that is you just simply move the problem from a Saturday afternoon to a Friday evening, and nothing really gets fixed. But I'll come to how I fix that in my conclusion a little bit later on. Let me know which qualifying format I've suggested you think would work best, and if there's a qualifying format that you think would work better, chuck it in the comments below as well. So why do we need a change or varied qualifying format? Is it because the track is too short? Is it because the track is too fast? Is it because of something else? Now, if you think of a circuit that needs potentially a change in qualifying format to the one already, obvious answers are Monaco and Monza and potentially Austria. Monaco, of course, because it's so short, the walls are so close. And do we really want pole position to be decided by a red flag like it was this year? Now, that's not to suggest that Charles did that on purpose. I think that was just an honest mistake, but it does kind of leave a sour taste in the mouth when you get all hyped up and then it just stops. There's no emotion. There's no, oh my gosh, what a lap. It kind of just dies. The buzz goes. While in Monza, everyone's so desperate for the slipstream that in 2019, of course, we had the farcical element where no one completed their final run because they all wanted to be last. They all wanted the benefit of the slipstream, which looked just ridiculous. Now, I don't think it should be dependent on the length of a circuit, because if you take Monaco and Monza and Austria, they're fairly short. Now, I think the decisive factor is actually the layout of the final section itself. Now, if you think about it, Austria is a fast mid-sector into a fast double right-hander to finish the lap, where the final sequence is crucial to opening the lap. But let's take Spa, for instance. 7 kilometres, surely not a problem with traffic. Everyone should be able to get out of each other's way. No. How often do we see a queue of cars at the bus stop? All the time, every year, and I guarantee you'll see it again this year, because if you can time it right and get a good slipstream out of La Source up through Eau Rouge and Radion, then down the Kemmel Straight into Les Combes, you pick up half a second potentially if your car is tuned to be fast in a straight line. And that can be the difference for a midfield team of starting 11th or 12th and actually starting 5th or 4th and picking up 8 to 10 points rather than just 3 or 4. But Spa, you'd think, so big, so much space, shouldn't be a problem. Yet it is. Bahrain, Barcelona, sensibly length tracks, but always problems in the final sector because they're always queuing down the back straight in Bahrain to get a good run out of the final corner, and in Barcelona it's that fiddly, horrible Mickey Mouse chicane that we all hate, and if they just got rid of it, I think a lot of this would not happen in Barcelona, because the previous layout, the fast sweeping double right, you'd be flat out. There would be no reason to slow down. I suppose it would just move the problem further back in the lap, but then at that point there is space for them to move. There's space for them to get out of the way, and it wouldn't hurt their run into the start of their lap so much. But you're seeing these problems where the opening to the lap is critical, and it actually starts before you cross the line. It's before you enter the final corner or when you exit the final corner. That preparation stage is pivotal and is essentially make or break. Now, Portimao might be a good example for not needing a change in format because of the layout of the circuit. And as I suggested with Barcelona, fast sweeping corners without the heavy braking zone might be a better solution. But we can't have them all because it would almost be impossible to overtake at the end of the straight. Now, every track has layout issues that are going to cause potential safety risks, and while the sport should be absolutely kept as safe as possible, we don't really want to ever neuter the challenge of a qualifying lap or of racing on a Sunday. And timing your qualifying run, delivering when the pressure is on, and navigating that traffic are part and parcel of the game, and it's something that has to be managed, has to be mastered. And the greats do that. Lewis Hamilton hasn't got 100 pole positions because he's constantly stuck in traffic. Max Verstappen isn't on pole position every week at the moment because he's getting stuck behind other cars or running wide at track limits. Managing the situation is part of being an elite sportsman. So in conclusion, as far as I am concerned, Formula 1 is a sport first and foremost, which means entertainment is secondary, and that essentially puts safety first. A dominant team is under zero obligation to make a Grand Prix or qualifying session exciting for us as the fans, and nor should they be. We tune in to watch them perform. They don't perform to entertain us. It's the other way around. And as we've seen this season, greater competition within the field leads to greater entertainment, and they kind of generally go hand in hand. And we see the current qualifying format works so well because it offers reward to those who perform well in each session. And those who get into each session then have an equal opportunity to set a lap time within the time frame they are given. And safety should never ever be disregarded. Drivers, as well as everybody else, must take responsibility for that while they're on the track. And as we saw in Austria, it's not always easy for them to achieve because they are hardwired to try and achieve the fastest lap time they can for themselves. And if it was me, I'd be exactly the same way. I wouldn't want someone else messing up my lap. So I wouldn't want someone cutting in front of me, and I wouldn't want someone being slow if I'm letting them start their lap. But the directives about conduct in the final sector didn't stop what was happening in practice, and it reared its ugly head in qualifying. Did it stop them doing it? No. Unless you got caught blocking someone, there was nothing to stop you. There was no penalty handed out unless you actually blocked someone directly. Now, in that case, because Seb was compromised by the other drivers jumping in front of him, and then he subsequently blocked Fernando, everyone who jumped in front of Seb and caused that problem should be penalised. So if you hand out harsher penalties, and I know we don't always like seeing penalties dished out, but if you give these guys an inch, they're going to take a mile. That's the name of the game. Maximise your advantage. And if there's a grey area or a loophole in Formula 1, dive through it. Double-decker diffusers, flexible wings, faster tyre stops, whatever. Do it. Gain an advantage. And the FIA are there to police that, to regulate it, and to make sure everyone is following the same set of rules and adhering to them. And I don't think they're doing a stringent enough job on that in terms of qualifying and making sure everyone is conducting themselves correctly. So before we change the format, I think stronger regulation of the traffic issue is in order, and perhaps harsh penalties and grid drops need to be handed out. If you block someone and it costs them their whole lap, delete times. Just go, have a no-nonsense approach. If you block someone, that's it. You lose your time. You lose your fastest time. And if you end up then using a slower time on older tyres or something, then that is your fault. They've got to be aware that the input that the engineers have is massive. They can see everything. And they work it for them, but they won't always work it to help everybody else and keep everyone safe. Not intentionally, that's just a byproduct of the way they're going about their business. And I think all of that will go a long way into reducing the risk of a major accident, and perhaps allow us to keep this qualifying format at most Grand Prix weekends. A format that we so love, we so enjoy, and while we should always be open to trying something new, this is what works. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So there you have it. There are my thoughts and suggestions on how to remedy the traffic issue in qualifying. Do you think that we need variable qualifying formats in Formula 1? It might be fun. It might add some extra elements to the championship and the way that it takes shape. But ultimately, it's down to the FIA, it's down to FOM to decide how we go about that. Thank you for watching. My name's Aaron. This has been the 5 Red Lights, and when the 5 Red Lights go out, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.